What's up, everybody? Welcome to Call to the Bullpen. I'm David Payne with Brad Zampar and Jimmy Miller. Let's play ball. I was going to start this thing today with a little rant about KFC from Barstool being a Kentucky Fried dickhead on social media about the WBC, but I think that the baseball world has kind of jumped on him enough after the big USA win last night. I think that every baseball outlet on social media has some kind of caption like, oh, this doesn't matter, right? So I think that we'll kind of brush past him there and just get into the source of the drama, which is some injuries that have came up as a result of the WBC. We saw the one that really set him and all of Mets Nation off. I'm sure that Jimmy was fuming himself. Was Edwin Diaz getting hurt, celebrating a win? Uh, it's a freak accident. He tore the patellar tendon in his knee. He's going to miss the whole season. Kind of brings you back to like Kendrys Morales, in a walk-off celebration. But it kind of stirred up a ruckus with Mets fans. You know, you had one fan base from one country that represents half of a city kind of dictating to everybody else that the World Baseball Classic doesn't matter. But we all know that it does, and we all know that it's fun. So we can move right past that since the whole baseball world has given it to KFC from Barstool pretty hard. But Jimmy, how you feeling as a Mets fan after seeing the closer go down like that?
Obviously, I'm not very happy, especially how it went down, right? Kind of just a celebration. But at the end of the day, I mean, Diaz, we've seen him be bad before, right? You think about 2019. So it's at the end of the day, it's a very volatile role. So I don't think this makes or breaks the Mets season. I still think guys can kind of jump in and maybe have some sort of community closer type role. So at the end of the day, obviously, I'm disappointed, but to me, it doesn't mean the season's over. For all we know, Diaz could have went out there this year, blown 8 saves with a 5 ERA. We've seen him do it before. Obviously, he's bounced back. Obviously, I'm still very upset about it. Going to have to rely on some other guys late in the pen.
There's a guy
Yeah,
out there
and
that's
you're gonna say exactly what I was gonna say. So go ahead. I know exactly where you're going with this, and you're 100% right. So go for it.
there's a guy out there who Buck Showalter relied on, who should have won a Cy Young award. Locked up 53 saves for him. He seems to be healthy. Looks like he's going to be pitching this year, and I certainly hope to see him pitching in Queens this year.
Yeah, not just the Cy Young Award. I'm gonna go as far as to say Zach Britton should have been the 2016 American League MVP.
He pretty much should have. It really wasn't close. There wasn't a runaway winner that year, and what Zach Britton meant to the Orioles that year is out of this world. It was something we haven't seen from a reliever in a very long time. The last guy who was even close to that was Dennis Eckersley, who ended up winning the Cy Young. But even still, I think Britton is going to be an impact player for the Mets, assuming that Buck brings him in.
And they are listed as one of the teams that's attending his showcase this week. He's having a showcase. The Mets will be there. Obviously, has that history with Buck Showalter, who, if they sign him, hopefully will actually utilize him in a big playoff spot this time around. As we don't need Jimmy experiencing the same kind of pain that we experienced watching Ubaldo Jimenez pitch in the 10th inning of a tie do or die game. So, Jimmy, hopefully Buck learned his lesson there. You guys can bring Zach Britton in, and he can be that guy for you. But how would you feel about that signing?
I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say a guy that hasn't been healthy or good in so long. Obviously, you look at the history. To me, it's worth a shot. I mean, it's not like the Mets don't have a bullpen. They have guys like Ottavino and David Robertson is going to prove to be a pretty big signing. He kind of had a big bounce back year last year. So, to me, at the end of the day, it's worth a shot to bring a guy like Britton in, especially see how he does early in the year. Really, what do you have to lose at that point? Obviously, it's a great division, but just see how he does. It's to me, it's worth a shot.
Now, staying on the topic of the Mets, while Barstool and all these other Mets fans are raving about the WBC and these are meaningless games that guys get hurt in, we also had Brandon Nimmo go down in a spring training game. Touch a little bit on that as a Mets fan, how you see the juxtaposition between those two injuries there. Why is one a little bit more difficult to swallow than the other? How do you feel about just the whole situation there with Nimmo and Diaz going down in two different settings in the same week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you saw Nemo's interview saying he didn't want to play in the WBC because he didn't want to get, risk getting hurt, and then the next day he goes down, in an in-game injury. You got to feel for the guy. To me, obviously, it kind of hurts more to see a guy like Diaz go down during a celebration. It looks like Nemo is week to week at this point, and we know he has a history of injuries. Obviously, we just signed him to this, big long contract, but that's going to come with it, right? He plays the game hard, plays the game aggressive, kind of like a Kyle Lewis type guy where there's always that chance he gets hurt because he plays the game so aggressively. But obviously the Diaz one hurts a little more for me. I think Nim will be just fine coming back.
I thought it was pretty funny, honestly, when both the Mets went down in like back-to-back days, because they didn't re-sign Degrom because they wanted more games, having more security of people out there, and then two of the big guys who they gave essentially Degrom's money to go down in a back-to-back days. It's kind of just a crazy sequence of events there. And then Degrom, after that shoulder fatigue at the beginning of the year, he looks pretty good this year to in spring training so far. But Nimmo, it was tough to see Nimmo go down because it looked a lot worse. It almost looked like the Gavin Lux injury at first because of the way he went down. But it's definitely good that he's only week to week, and hopefully he can get back by May at the latest.
And one other injury that we saw was Jose Altuve just yesterday going down with what we know is a broken thumb now, and going to miss a few weeks because of that. And that's another thing that it just could have happened in a spring training game. It just the pitch got away. But do you guys think that this will discourage players from playing in the WBC in the future? I personally, with the way that all the players come back talking about it, I don't think that it's going to have an impact. I really think that these players understand more than the fans do that anytime you're playing baseball, whether it's spring training, WBC, whatnot, that there's that risk. So I personally don't think that there's going to be a crazy huge effect. But what do you guys think?
I don't think there's going to be that big of an effect. I just think when you don't have the cream of the crop players from the U.S. playing in it, you get guys like Daniel Bard going in the fifth inning. He's all over the place. He was all over the place the game before, and then you throw him out there. I think Altuve was like the fourth or fifth batter he faced. He was all over the place. They should have just pulled him. If there's that three batter minimum in the WBC, I'm not too sure, but I think they should have pulled him right away. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you're not going to have the best pitchers, the best arms out there, obviously the offense is great. Then the product's going to suffer. So obviously, I don't think it's going to affect much on the offensive end, but I would like to see more arms get out there. Like Scherzer said, he doesn't want to participate in kind of like this shortened, high intensity type thing. He's an older guy. He wants to progress into his training early in the season. So I get that, but maybe they'd move this WBC to a different month at the end of the year or something to get more guys involved. I don't know what they should do, but they need those arms out there because the offensive players are always going to be there.
Yeah, I think it was David Ortiz who said when the Dominican lost, he was like, if you put this tournament in the middle of June, the DR is going to run away with it because these guys are already in the groove with it. But that's definitely interesting for them to do it like during the season. I don't know. It would have to be coordinated with MLB, and Rob Manfred doesn't really seem like a guy who wants to give in to other organizations. He's kind of likes to run everything himself, have the final say. So that could be interesting, but I think it could affect players overall who are either coming back from an injury or getting up there in age. They might be a lot more against playing in the baseball classic just to avoid these injuries. When in the grand scheme of things, you're more important to your team than you are to this 3-4 week tournament.
Yeah, I think that the March tournament is the best answer. I don't think that there's anything better. You're not going to do it in November after guys just got done with the 162 game season, and then you're taking players away from mid season in their other leagues because the other half of the globe is in their summer then. So um, March seems to be the time when everybody is kind of in between their typical seasons. And you're not going to do it in January and load these pitchers up and then have, a 3-4 week break until spring training. I think that this is the best time just because it's the time when these guys are ramping up anyways. So they have to be close to, full intensity by now anyways, because they're in these real, we're 10 days from opening day. So, I think that this is the best answer, even though it's not perfect. It's the best that we're going to get is a late March tournament. Maybe moving it so that MLB opening day, because the next one is going to be 2026, right?
Yeah, they're going back on the 4-year schedule, so
Yeah.
it'll be 3 years, but it's going back on a 4-year.
Yeah, so I think maybe 2026 you don't open the season until the major league season till April 1st at the earliest, and maybe you push this back a week so guys are a little more ramped up with the arms, and then you just go right from WBC like a 3-day turnaround to opening day or something. So maybe that's the answer, just to push it a little bit later in March. But I think timing wise, March is the best that you're going to get. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's not going to be perfect, but we got to take what we can. But we got 4 teams left. We've got Cuba versus the U.S. tonight happening, and then Mexico versus Japan in the semifinals here. So we did our initial power rankings, and now we're going to rank these 4 teams here. And at number 4, we've got the Cuban team. Just looking at these 4 teams, that they kind of stand out as having maybe the least deep roster. We knew that this was going to be a good team. At the start of the year, we mentioned how it's the first year that players who had defected can come back and play for the Cuban national team, giving them a big boost over past years. So we knew that they were going to be a good team. Then we've got Jimmy's sleeper team at number 3, who is Mexico, who we had a little bit of debating about here because they beat the U.S. head-to-head. But we see Mexico's matchup with Japan as super daunting because Japan has kind of just run through this tournament. So we see the U.S. having a little bit better of a matchup here in the semifinals. So Mexico at 3, the U.S. at 2, and then Brad's pick to win it all, Japan, has really kind of coasted through this tournament. There's not been really a moment where they've had to sweat even. So at this point, I think that, Brad, your pick for Japan is looking fantastic here. They might even mercy the championship. This team is just so stacked. They've had no problems. We've seen the U.S. sweat it out. We've seen them lose to Mexico. We saw them in a real sweaty game last night in the 8th inning. You have a huge moment there with Trey Turner, but these games came down to the wire for the U.S. So a little worried there, especially when you mentioned guys like Daniel Bard and stuff are the lockdown guys in the bullpen. But that's our power rankings for the semifinals. Cuba at 4, Mexico at 3, the U.S. at 2, and Japan at number 1. So Japan actually jumped up 3 spots because we had them ranked up at number 3. So shout out Japan there for running through the tournament this easy. But now we're going to get into our awards predictions for the 2023 MLB season. And we're going to kick this off with the big one. Let's start it with the MVP award because it's the one that everybody is most interested in. So on the American League side, Jimmy, where do you fall? This is always a tough one because the obvious answer is Shohei Ohtani, and it's still kind of not decided. How do you navigate the Shohei Ohtani problem and allow other people to win the MVP? So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on the American League side are.
Yeah, I have Vlad Guerrero Jr. winning it of the Blue Jays. Kind of a bit of a down year last year, but to me, I got the Blue Jays winning that division. And really, I'm going to stick with that. And the only way I think they win the AL East is if Vladdy just goes off, has like a 50 home run season, 120 RBI season, just has an incredible year. To me, that's the only way you're really going to beat Shohei, is if you put up kind of like Judge did last year, put up these 50-plus home run years, these incredible RBI numbers, and just, outwar him, I guess, at the end of the day. So to me, I have Vladdy winning the award. To me, I mean, it's not that tough of a pick. You think about guys, he's probably a top 10 favorite, but he did have a bit of, like I said before, a down year last year. So I got to go Vladdy.
So my pick changed this morning. It was originally I was going to go right back to my guns. I was going to go with Jordan to win it. Oh boy.
You're here.
Okay. Frozen on my end, but I was going to go back to Jordan to win it. And the Altuve thing kind of stings because those first 2 months or so that he's not going to be there, he's going to be missing the table setter. So I'm going to go with Jose Ramirez to win the MVP this year. I think he'll go 300. He'll go 30-30. He'll have 100 runs scored, 100 RBIs. And I think unless somebody has one of those breakout seasons or record-setting seasons, like Jim said, it'll probably be Shohei, but I really don't want to pick Shohei.
Yeah, so the way I see it, there's five players, only five players in the American League who can beat out Shohei Ohtani for MVP. And those players are two that you mentioned, Vlad Jr., and then J Ram. Then Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, and Adley Rutschman. I think are the only five players in the American League that have a chance to beat Shohei Ohtani for MVP. I don't think anybody else can do something special enough to beat out what he does. And with that being said, my Orioles bias is going to show, and I'm going to take Adley Rutschman for MVP. He's going to be a 25-year-old catcher that's going to do things that catchers don't do. And if his spring training performances carry over into the regular season, you're going to see a really, really special season. And the kind of the way that Jim said that Vlad is going to be the one that carries the Blue Jays to the AL East title. If the Orioles make that jump to a playoff team this year, it's going to be because of this guy. And I think that him being a offensive minded catcher and also as defensively sound as he is, that he's one of these five guys that can do it. But I mean, Shohei's the safe answer, but for the sake of not taking it, I think Adley's my guy here. Now we'll jump over to the National League where probably a much deeper field. You don't have that Shohei figure looming. And this award kind of is just up for grabs every year. It's anybody's award. So who do you guys have on the National League side?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm going with Machado, Manny Machado with the Padres. I think this is the year he finally does it. He always seems like he's on the cusp of winning it, but he never does. He has more protection now, obviously, with Bogarts. You have Tatis coming back. So I do like Machado for that award a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ronald Acuna Jr. Last year, I think he said he was playing most of the year around 80, 85%. Really was just out there because they needed him to be in that lineup, be that presence there. But I feel like this is Ronald's gonna. He hasn't really had a coming out party since his rookie year, and I feel like he's gonna get back on that level of superstardom and take home the MVP this year.
Yeah, and I'm going to take another Padre who's kind of become the forgotten guy in the National League, who childish Bambino Juan Soto. I feel like is actually at a point where he is criminally underrated now. He is in like his Bryce Harper phase right now, where he has a down year. There's some guys missing around him. He's on a bad team for half the year, and he kind of falls under the radar, where people don't understand that this is a top three baseball player. So I think that Juan Soto is going to have a monster year. He's going to secure himself a $500 million bag this year. He's going to have an on base percentage of no lower than 460. That lineup is absolutely stacked over there. There's nobody that you can pitch to. They're going to have to pitch around him. He's not going to chase balls, and he's going to have an incredible year over there in San Diego. Now we'll jump to the Cy Young Awards. Again, starting on the American League side. And to me, the American League Cy Young is again a complete anybody's award. I think that the AL on the AL side, all of your guys that could win the award could also be terrible. I think when you look at guys like Cole, he could have a 1.9 or he could have a 3.6. Like that's what you're working with in the American League here. And I'm going to go with a guy who's always up there at the top. Maybe hasn't been as good the last couple of years as he was in his peak, but Shane Bieber's my guy. This guy's still young. He's got incredible stuff. And I think the Guardians defense is really an asset to him and to that entire pitching staff. And I think that Shane Bieber gets back to Cy Young form and takes it home this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to go with the sleeper pick, just so, obviously, like you said with Shohei, you don't want to go with the obvious guy. You kind of want to be the one to say, well, looking back, I picked him. I was maybe one of half a dozen people instead of 500,000 people. So I got to go Luis Garcia of the Astros. I like his stuff a lot, right? Year 3, just turned 26. He's kind of progressed quite a bit after, 3 years of play. With Verlander gone, he's going to get more innings, right? I love his off-speed stuff. And with Fromber and Javier, he kind of falls under the radar when you really think about the quality of that rotation. So I really think he's going to take a big step and take home the Cy Young in the AL.
So I'm gonna go back to Garrett Cole. I'm gonna take him. Last year, I believe, if you cut his home runs in half, he had an ERA of 212, 215, somewhere in that range. And he led the majors in home runs last year. He doesn't have to be the guy anymore with Rodon there. Um, so I think that's going to take off a lot of the pressure that he's kind of built up his first couple years in New York. And I feel like he's just going to get back up there, really get at it, and probably put up two, not two, 20 wins and probably upwards of 275 strikeouts.
I'm just not sure with Cole that eliminating the long ball at Yankee Stadium is something he's going to be able to do. I'm just not confident in his, because that is always pretty much what hurts him. Like, he's not out there giving up parades of hits, really. He'll give up the ill-timed long balls. I'm not sure that's something that he's going to be able to get rid of, but there is something to be said for not having to be that lone ace, especially when you look at like Sevy coming back. Sevy's a guy who's really underrated for this award too. I think that a healthy Luis Severino could put up Cy Young numbers.
I do think that with
In
the
a contract
increase
year
in
too.
interleague play that we're going to see this year, maybe there's that lack of familiarity with Cole. So maybe he will give up less home runs, right, instead of playing these same teams over and over within your league. So, I do see where Brad comes from. He could cut his home runs in half because of that lack of familiarity.
Yeah, it's an interesting award for sure. But like I said, Cy Youngs are so year to year. Jimmy and I were talking before going on air about how like guys like R.A. Dickey come out of nowhere and just win Cy Youngs. So you never know what's going to happen with this award. And on the National League side, it's kind of the opposite, where I feel like on the American League side, all your guys who could be nasty could also be trash. But on the National League side, you just have 20 guys who are going to be disgusting and have sub-3 ERAs. So they really, there's no wrong answer on this side. But I'm going to go with Zach Gallen coming into his own here, having this huge breakout year and taking home the Cy Young Award after putting up a heck of a campaign last year.
Yeah, I have Julio Urias of the Dodgers, right? I mean, he's been nasty the past couple of years. I think this is the year he finally takes it home. Really, like I said before, has fallen short these last couple of years, not because of, his fault. It's because guys around him have been so nasty. So, yeah, I'm going with Urias.
So this is going to be the first double up pick. I'm also going to take Julio Urias to take this home. It's just a guy who continues to get no respect for seemingly just having a legend around him like Clayton Kershaw and Walker Buehler when he's healthy. Just seems like he was slotted below. Even last year, Tony Gonsolin kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like he's going to take that step up, go be that upper echelon guy, and finally get that Cy Young award after sticking around for a while.
Yeah, and we haven't started Call to the Bookie for this year yet, but if you guys are looking to place futures bets on Cy Young, Julio Urias is your guy. He's got plus 2,000 odds right now. So a $10 bet's going to pay you out $200. So go and hammer that bet right now, because he's been top 3 the past couple years, and that's criminally underrated when it comes to the Vegas odds there. Now we'll go to the Rookie of the Year, which is another tricky one to predict. It feels like always the favorites at the positions aren't the ones who end up winning it. But on the American League side, I feel very confident that this award is going to Baltimore. It's going to be an Oriole, whether it's Grayson or Gunnar is the question. And I'm going to say, and I'm still not. I've been going back and forth on this one the whole episode, but I'm going to say that it's Grayson, because he's a bigger need for his team. The pitching is a bigger need than the offense right now in the O's lineup, and if he can come out and pitch like we think he can, then he could be a serious anchor in this rotation. So I'm going to go with Grayson Rodriguez on the American League side. I think that the strikeout numbers are going to be there too, which is something that's going to set him apart maybe from the other pitchers in the conversation here on the AL side. So Grayson Rodriguez is my pick, but if it's not him, it's still coming back to Baltimore in the form of Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah, like you said, Grayson, right? There probably no other pitchers in the AL. Rookies might challenge him. The only one I think could would be Hunter Brown of the Astros, who I'm going with. People say he's kind of like a mini Justin Verlander. 2-0 last year with a .89 ERA over 7 appearances, 20 innings, 22 strikeouts. I love his stuff. I think he's going to step up in a big way. A lot of people like him for this award, as do I. I really like his stuff. So I'm going to go with Hunter Brown of the Astros.
I'm gonna go with Gunner. I feel like it's gonna be a situation last year where it's gonna be between two or three guys. It was Adley, it was Stephen Kwan, and it was Julio. And I feel like this year it's gonna be another two position guys. It's gonna be Gunner, and then I feel like he's Velope has just really impressed me this spring, and I really don't see why he wouldn't start the job, have the starting job in New York. Obviously, he's going to go through growing pains. He hasn't played above Double A, but he'll have the adding stats that'll give him the edge at the end of the year over some other guys. So I'm going to go with Gunner, but it's going to be pretty close between those three.
I definitely think that Volpe should be on the starting, opening day roster. But when you say you have a hard time imagining a reason why, just picture Brian Cashman in your head. Just picture the Yankees' decision-making process, and you'll be like, okay, yeah, he'll be up in mid-August or so. Yeah. So you might think that it's the logical move, but that's not the Yankee way to make the logical move. Now over onto the NL side, um, I'm gonna be basic and go with the favorite again after just locking up himself, $100+ million bag. Corbin Carroll's gonna ball out for the D-backs. And you're going to notice a D-backs theme here with my NL picks. I had Gallen for the Cy Young. I'm taking Corbin Carroll for the Rookie of the Year. So I think that they're a team that's going to put it together, and he's going to be a big part of the reason why. He does everything fantastic. He's a true five-tool player, and I think that he's going to ball out. And it's going to kind of be like a Julio situation where no matter how bad you want somebody else in the league to win, you got to kind of acknowledge that he's the guy at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, I'm going Corbin Carroll as well, only because, by default, there's not that many people in the NL. It's a much weaker rookie class than the AL. So by default, I'm going to go with Corbin Carroll as well.
So the only guy that can rival Corbin Carroll is Jordan Walker, and he has been disgusting this spring. He's going to be hitting behind Goldschmidt and Arenado, so he'll have plenty of opportunities to get RBIs, runs, stuff like that. And they're going to want to pitch to him instead of pitching to the other two. So I feel like it's going to set up nice for him, he's going to be my choice to take home the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and I'm even gonna throw the name out of another Cardinals prospect there, who was one of our minor league players of the week, who's kind of torn it up, who's Mason Wynn. If he gets to see significant big league time, then he could put up some numbers too. They're a team that last year we were constantly mentioning in the rookies of the week, like they're bringing up young guys like it's nothing right now. So really exciting to see what's going on in there with a young class of guys when you mix it in with those veteran guys like Goldie and Arenado. So they're definitely a fun team to watch, and you had them as your clear favorite there in the Central. Now we'll go to the Manager of the Year for the AL side. I will continue to once again show my Orioles bias and give it to the guy who probably, I mean, you could say should have gotten it last year, but Terry deserved it last year. But I'm going to say Brandon Hyde comes and takes it this year. The Orioles do make that jump forward. Everybody kind of acknowledges, okay, this guy was right there last year, and now they take that step. So Brandon Hyde's going to win it on the AL side this year. What do you guys think?
I'm going to go with John Schneider of the Blue Jays, right? Just, first full year as manager. Obviously, Montoya, I think he won it a couple years ago. So it wouldn't be the first Blue Jay manager to win it, but it's going to be a tough division. So I really think, first full year, kind of take that into account. I mean, I want to say he's a first time MLB manager. And so I really think that Schneider's going to win that AL Manager of the Year award.
This guy did not come out of retirement to be just thrown around and do a little Tony La Russa stuff. Bruce Bochy will win the Manager of the Year this year. I feel like he didn't come to Texas to go and not make the wild card at least, and I feel like with them getting there, my prediction, he will take that award home.
That's a good one. That's a little sleeper pick. I like that. Now, on the NL side, I'm going to continue my Diamondbacks role here, and I'm going to say Torey Lavulo is going to win the Manager of the Year over there, because it's going to be a similar situation where the D-backs put something together that a lot of people aren't expecting, and our or maybe in an Orioles situation last year where they're in contention right up until that last week, even if they don't make it. So if Torey Lovullo doesn't win it, he's going to be in the Brandon Hyde position of almost winning it, but somebody just edges him out.
Yeah, I was going to go with Torey Lovullo as well, but I went the other way. I went with Dave Roberts of the Dodgers. Obviously, I kind of shit on them last week, but I mean, at the end of the day, they kind of are the underdog in that division, with the Padres being so good, right? They've had, guys like Walker Buehler go down. So I mean, I think that even if they sneak their way into a wild card spot at the very minimum, I think that Roberts would be the favorite for the NL.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Roberts too. They've had a lot of turnover this year. A lot of new faces. They're gonna be relying on a lot of their younger guys, so they're gonna need somebody to really bucker down in that clubhouse. And I feel like Roberts, obviously with his pedigree, I feel like he can do it.
Yeah, now jumping to our final award, which is the Comeback Player of the Year. This is a tricky one to predict always because there's so much like different criteria that could go into it. And we're actually going to touch on that a little bit when we get to the NL side. But on the AL side here, I'm sure that there's lots of guys that it could be. But I wanted to, fulfill going 4 for 5 with Orioles picks here. And I'm going to take Adam Frazier, the second baseman for the Orioles, who was a real hot name at the trade deadline a couple years ago. We saw him in San Diego. We saw him on Seattle, on some real contenders. So he's a guy that always hangs around these contenders. Kind of gives me a little bit of like Ben Zobrist vibes. And I think that he's going to have a real bounce back this year after having a down year last year. And he's going to be a big part of this Orioles team this year. So Adam Frazier is my pick for the AL Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah, so on the AL side, I'm going to go with Brandon Lau of the Rays, right? He was terrible in 2022, 2021, 39 home runs, 99 RBIs. So to me, I think he's, kind of a clear favorite for that award, but I do think that he has that comeback potential.
It's not every day you can pick a $100 million man to be a comeback player of the year, but that's exactly what Rendon is going to be. He's been hurt the last few years. If the Angels want to do anything out west, they're going to need Anthony Rendon to be healthy and playing at a pretty high level, so he will be my pick.
Yeah, that's one I'm really rooting for too. I mentioned that in our last episode, how he's such a big part of that team over there. And Mike Trout is going to be foaming at the mouth to get back into playoff atmosphere. So, hopefully Rendon can take that step forward, and because he really was one of the game's elite third baseman just a few years ago. Now, on the National League side, we've got a little debate here to have over what constitutes the Comeback Player of the Year, because my answer and the clear answer in the National League is Fernando Tatis Jr. to come back and win this award, to possibly come back and win that award plus the MVP. So missed last year with a combo of injury and suspension. Now, Jimmy makes an argument that it's steroid suspension. You should not be up for Comeback Player of the Year when you come back. My counter is that there's an injury beforehand, so he's coming back from the injury. I don't know. Like, what do you guys make of this? I mean, Brad, you're kind of in the middle there, but where are you on this? Is this a one-off case where you have a guy who was injured and popped for a steroid suspension, so he's good, or the steroid suspension wipes him out? What do you think of this whole thing?
So it's really tough. It's a case that we've never really seen before, because even if he just plays half a year, he'd be more than good enough to win this award. I feel like the steroids, at the end of the day, getting popped for the steroids the year before by default would eliminate you, just preference, because you get suspended. I mean, there's been guys who get suspended during the year for fighting and stuff, but that doesn't affect them. But steroids, I feel like, are different, and I probably wouldn't vote for him, but I also wouldn't have a problem with him winning the award. So it's really just preference on what you want to go with.
Yeah, in my opinion, obviously, I kind of bring up David's counterpoint of at the end of the day, if he maybe got popped for steroids, missed the entire year last year, and then got hurt, and that's why he's missing time this year, then it'd be a different story. But he's missing time this year due to a suspension, so he's coming back this year, already off on a suspension. So to me, that's kind of what he's coming back for. That's the latest thing that he's coming back from is a suspension. So to me, I don't think he should win. Obviously, I'm not anti-Tatis. I like what he brings to the table. But to me, comeback player of the year should not be in the discussion for him.
Yeah, so the way I see it is just that the games that he missed last year from suspension are games that he wouldn't have played anyways, because he was going to miss those games with his injury anyways. So it's not like it took any additional time away from him last year. I see your argument where it spills over into this year, but I think that for the most part, I see comeback player of the year as like a year over year thing, where if a guy had gotten hurt, um, let's say like Jose Altuve, if he comes back after missing 10 weeks and is stellar, like I'm not going to give him the comeback player of the year because that injury happened. I don't think that the injury happening this year would warrant comeback player of the year for him this year. So I think I'm looking at this season as a clean slate and looking at the last time that he played, he left because of injury, and he's coming back now from that for the first time, is how I see it. I think that actually the way that you said it, where if he did steroids and then got hurt and then came back, I think that's more disqualifying than what actually happened. Because the initial suspension in that case, the reason he went out in that case would be the steroids. Where here, the reason he went out is the injury. So just a bit of a philosophical difference there. But I did come prepared with another pick just for you. For if we let's say no Tatis, Jason Hayward would be my pick. He's going to have a big role in the Dodgers outfield. I think that he's going to have to step up with Mookie Betts having to come in and play some time at second base. So if the Dodgers are going to succeed, it's going to be because Jason Hayward stepped up in a big way. So I'd like to see the J. Hay kid take home the comeback player of the year if it's not Tatis.
Yeah, so I'm going with Chris Bryant of the Rockies. He's tearing up this spring. I mean, he was pretty good last year. He had a pretty good average last year, but he still missed time. He had, maybe like 5 home runs. So, I mean, we've seen this before from him where he's kind of up and down a little bit, right? He has some years where he's, hitting 290 with 35 home runs, and next year he's hitting 260 with, 25 home runs. So we've kind of seen this up and down from him before. So I think that he is due for a healthy season and a productive season.
So if I think the Cardinals are going to be as good as they are, they need Jack Flaherty to make more than 25 starts. And him being back brings a big presence to that pitching staff into the hold. So as long as he's healthy, he'll be my pick to win it.
That's a good one. And that stays true to your, predictions. I like that. Jimmy takes the Blue Jays and then he takes Vlad. We all got our reasonings here. I like that. So that wraps up our awards predictions. We're going to post these on social media. So follow us at CTBP Pod on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. And we've only got 10 days until opening day. So we're going to be getting into our actual episode sequence. We'll have one more episode where we'll go over the end of the World Baseball Classic and some things before the season. But we are one episode away from the regular season, guys. So it's exciting times. We'll have a World Baseball Classic winner the next time we're back. So we'll see you all next week.